All right, since this is just a demo, I am going to move through these slides pretty quickly. And but I have to tell you, I am always so happy to share my memories from this wonderful trip to Cairo, Egypt, October of 2017. The whole reason we went over was our 29th Congress for BPW International, that's Business and Professional Women, which I've been a member of since 2007. And Sharon Simmons on the left there is my colleague from BPW Boulder. She was our president at the time. Here we are at the airport getting ready to go. Out of this whole bag of chips, I pulled this chip out that has a sailboat on it, and you'll see why later on. And I love, we can't control the wind, we can only adjust the sails. Here's my other colleagues from Colorado, BPW. At JFK Airport, getting ready to board for Cairo. It was a pretty long flight, and we ended up, well, Sharon and I went to the Mercure Hotel. The rest of our colleagues were over at the Mina House where the conference would be. And we made a big mistake going to this Mercure Hotel because my colleague has disabilities, and we wanted the closest room to the stairway, and we got the furthest room. Anyway, long story short, we ended up moving, but before we moved, we did stay one night there, and you could see the pyramids right from the Mercure Hotel. And now the Mina House is even closer to the pyramids. You'll see in a minute. And then the first morning we walked, because it was only about 4 or 5 blocks over to the Mina House where the conference was going to be. And that was a big mistake. There's so much traffic, we could not get across the street. Finally, some Egyptian man came out in the street and stopped traffic for us, so we were able to get across. Now, I looked in these recycle bins every day to see if there's anything in them. I never saw anything getting recycled. So we moved over to the Mina House, and so glad we did. This is where we had breakfast every morning, just beautiful. There's Kathy Kelly on the left, my BPW Boulder colleague, and Evie Hooten, BPW Northwest Metro. She's also a past Colorado senator. So just lovely at the Mina House. This is where we walked from our room every day to go get breakfast. And the Sunday before the conference started, we did the tourist thing and we visited the pyramids. We had to take a bus, even though it was very close by. Lots of trash everywhere you went, and I'll talk about that more later. The Great Pyramids of Giza were built over a span of 85 years between the years 2589 and 2504 BC. I stole this picture. A friend of mine took this beautiful picture. And here was our awesome guide, and I can't remember her name.
Move the boats with the blocks of stones. Come to this side of the River Nile, which is the west side, and start to bring the blocks we discovered recently to ports.
And she took us all over the place. Here's my BPW Boulder Kathy Kelly again, in front of the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid. And you could see Cairo in the background and all the pollution in the air. Lots and lots of cars, but also the burning of agricultural waste contributes to that. Here we are up on the pyramid. We didn't go inside, but you know, it's just amazing. You know, I've seen TV shows on the pyramids, but when you're there in person, it just blows you away. Here's another of my BPW colleagues, Megan. And lots of people get around in these little rucksacks and camels. I don't know what that little green orb is in the middle. Maybe it's an orb. I don't know. So these camels were, they're pretty high. It was pretty scary getting up on those camels. So the Great Sphinx, people say it had the body of a lion representing strength and the head of the man representing wisdom. 4,500 years old. Now, Teddy Roosevelt sent around the Great White Fleet, the Navy, US Navy, around the world to show the world how powerful we are. My grandfather was in the Navy at that time. I didn't get to meet him. He died just before I was born in 1960, but he's the second from the left there with his colleagues. And I wanted to recreate the picture. I could not get in front of the Sphinx because they have it fenced off now, but I'm the second from the left with my colleagues. That was pretty darn exciting, I must say. And there's those beautiful camels again. I take my little bear with me wherever I go, and I was kind of embarrassed about it, but I started learning that people take their little stuffed animals along with them when they travel. Judith on the right from Australia, both those beautiful women were BPW Australia, and on the left, Susan from New York City, BPW. So here we are at the conference, but before the, well, no, it was the first, well, I have to say, I was representing National Federation BPW as the environmental chair so that I could do votes in the business meetings. So I had to attend all the business meetings. I'll talk about that a little more. But the first night at the conference, we did a light show at the pyramids. It was just amazing. And here's my little kid enjoying the music. And there's all of us from BPW Colorado, all my colleagues. And it was so exciting. They did a big parade with all the BPW women. Again, 270 women from, I think it was like 52 countries. And it was just a beautiful parade showing all the flags. So as I said, I became the environmental committee, head of the environmental committee in 2015 for BPW Colorado. We never had an environmental committee prior to that, and we've been around for 100 years, BPW. We were one of the first organizations to support the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, written in 1923. So here we are at a business meeting, and our BPW New York, Francesca, and we talked a lot about sustainability around the planet. And one really great idea, I heard one of the workshops, I thought it was BPW Vietnam, but it was someone, she was doing a project trying to get water stations built in every town where tourists could refill their water bottles to cut down on plastic bottled water. Now, in Cairo, I never drank more plastic bottled water in my life. We had to because their water is not very good, the city water. So I thought that was a great idea. BPW started building filter stations. And so, oh, this is Kiko from Japan, BPW Japan. Every time she saw me, she gave me a gift. I must have got 4 or 5 gifts from her. So the second night, we went on, took the bus down into the city. And this was a beautiful place, a castle. And very, very fancy. Walking in. And then we had like a 6 or 7 course dinner. It was just amazing. Now there is President Liz Benham of National Federal BPW here in the USA, and she did some speaking at that event that night. And then we were promoting our 30th Congress for BPW USA. We're hoping it's going to happen this year in August in Orlando. So that's why we have the Mickey Mouse ears. There's our BPW Hollywood. And so here we are promoting our Okay, so we traveled all that way, so we decided to spend an extra week, and we flew down to Luxor so that we could get on a sailboat. And now I want to mention here, Upper and Lower Egypt. You would think Upper Egypt would be to the north, but it's where the Nile River originates, which is in the south. So Upper Egypt is South Egypt, and Lower Egypt is up north by the Mediterranean Sea. So we ended up going on a dahabaya sailboat, and this is our captain, Muhammad. A lot of men named Muhammad there in Egypt. And BPW Germany, Johanna, is the owner, and she's married to the captain. And she owns this business, and oh my gosh, it was just lovely. The sailors, there were just 10 of us on the sailboat, and then a crew of 4 or 5. This is Rabia. He always had a smile on his face. There he is. And these little light fixtures, they were glass things hanging, and they tinkled in the wind. It was the most peace and serenity I've ever felt in my life, being on that river. So we stopped at a lot of places, and we looked through ruins. And here is our awesome Egyptologist, Mohammed Afami. And I'm telling you, this guy is going to be famous. He spent a whole year on a dissertation just on one of the Egyptian symbols. And he was just a lovely guide, very knowledgeable. And, you know, I have to say, I was very frightened at first going into towns and walking around thinking, oh my God, there's going to be a terrorist attack. And you know what? These people in Egypt, they're just trying to raise their families and have a good life. You know, the terrorism thing is, I think I've been brainwashed by politics in USA. You know, just like there's conservative Christians and liberal Christians, it's the same thing with the Muslim world. So here we are walking around. And oh, I have to say, these towers, they amplified the prayer times of the Muslims. And you could be a mile away from a town and you could still hear prayer time, which is 4 a.m., sunrise, noon, 4 p.m., and sunset. And I started making a practice. Every time I heard prayer time, I stopped what I was doing and said a prayer for world peace. Just amazing people there. And Kathy Kelly, she's making the girls laugh. And like I say, that Nile River was so peaceful. And we had the best food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner on that sailboat. Organic, fresh vegetables, and just really great food. And we enjoyed that. So, this is our Manjul is her name. She's from India, but she's been BPW USA California since 1963. Here's another town that we traveled in and saw the Temple of Horus. And I wish I could remember more about all the symbols and the pharaohs and the queens and everything. Here's Muhammad explaining the symbols, and I tell you, he just knew it all. And so that is the statue of Horus. And I had this thing with entranceways. Now this entranceway was in the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, with Harrison Ford. I just played around with the Photoshop a little bit to make it look spooky. And this was he called it a movie theater, an ancient movie theater, and you would walk through and read the symbols and it told a story. And here we are again. And now, my colleagues were thanking me profusely because before the trip, I did a lot of research, and we could have either gone in this cruise ship with 200 people or the lovely Dabahaya sailboat with 10 of us plus the crew. Plus, the sailboat could pull over and moor in areas where the cruise ships couldn't. So one of the highlights of the trip was pulling over here at this rural area. And I'll tell you, BPW Angela, I can't think of his last name. She was really great with the kids, showing them Pokemon on her phone, and the kids just loved her. So we took a hike through a farm, a rural farm, and the kids were passing us on their donkeys. And there's their compost. And there's an old plastic bottled water. Who knows how long that had been there. So we walked through this rural town. And again, about this trash, you know, the people would just throw their trash out in the yard. And me being the environmental person, I was rather upset. But one day when we were on the sailboat, my colleagues, we were talking on a lovely afternoon, and they said, Laurie, these people, they just want to get the next meal on the table. And I felt this great sense of surrender, thinking, yeah, you're right. And that's the same with people everywhere. Oh, so this guy, these are figs, and we wanted to pay him for some figs. He insisted he gave us a whole bag of figs for free. And here's the town, the rural town. And I love that picture. So there was a school, and of course all the schools have to have their soccer place. That's a soccer stadium right there. And then the kids, they were just so excited to see us. Check this out.
You guys are all on video.
Oh, that was so exciting. Okay, so I think this is, yes, the quarries. This is where the Egyptians would cut out these huge rocks and stones, and who knows how they got them on those boats. But you could see how large, like one of the stones that built the pyramids was, as you could see, probably 30 feet high and tons, weighed tons. We're going to be up inside that. That's looking out the cave that you just saw. There we are. And we almost got in trouble with they had security at all these temples. This was a security guy on the left there. And we went up where the sign said, don't go up here. And we went anyway. And the security guy came and got us. But these are the rope holes that they would pull these giant stones down to the boats and then float them down the Nile. This is really interesting. The wind, the prevailing winds, well, the current, so we were going against the current, going south on the Nile. The Nile flows to the north. And but the prevailing winds are usually blowing to the south. So we use the sails most of the time, but when the wind would die down, we would take these tugboats. And one day they let us get on the tugboat so we could look at the sailboat from there. So we're on the tugboat there and we're looking at the Dabahaya sailboat. Here's the Captain Muhammad. All right. Well, I'm going to go through these fairly quick. This was really exciting. I got to watch these sheep being herded one day. And then these small islands, like the farmers, if they were going to work somewhere else, they would put their camels or donkeys on these islands so they'd be safe and people wouldn't be able to steal them. And then they'd come back and pick them up later. We saw all kinds of temples. Here's the Temple of Sabak, and that's looking up towards the ceiling. They did this decorative stonework on the walls, on the ceiling. This is a sound chamber. And supposedly the king, he could sit there and listen to anything that was going on in the temple. He could hear everything. There, I gave it a try. Oh, here's one of the towns, and the music was lovely. And they let me play one of their Egyptian instruments there. That was really fun. Okay, and yeah, again, the litter. I just had to surrender, and you know, these people, they're not thinking about litter, what litter does. But one of my colleagues, there was a town in Egypt where they began to put a littering fine, and that worked. So, and here was a camel market one day. We went to the camel market. It's 2,000 American to buy a good camel, and it was really amazing. And I tell you, this, I kept trying to catch this camel. He had a tear coming out of his eye, and every time I went to take the picture, I missed the tear. And then here's a market with grains and spices, fruits and vegetables. And it was just beautiful. Now on the sailboat, when we would go away, we'd come back, and the crew would make these things out of the towels. And there's another one. And this was Sharon's big elephant they made. And here's another place we pulled over and went swimming in the Nile. And here's me having fun with my little kid. This guy, he was camped right next to the river, cutting his wood for his fire. And this was another highlight of my trip. I got to play soccer with these kids for about 10 minutes. And I didn't get the video of me in there, but so I've never missed a Halloween dressing up. So I had to dress up on October 31st. I'm an Egyptian sailor. There we are. It's getting to be sunset. And I think this is our, he's trimming the sails. He had to climb up there. I think this was the last evening on our way. There's Johanna, the owner of the boat again, BPW Germany. It was a beautiful sunset that evening as we got into Aswan. And yeah, I'm gonna have to go through some of these quickly if I'm gonna end on time. Here we are getting off. I was so sorry to leave that boat. And then we traveled to another ruins. And then, well, here I did a concert. 2 people showed up. No, just kidding. But this was a place where they would hold concerts. We did go to the Aswan Dam. It's the largest dam in the world. And I think in one place it said it's 17 miles wide, but it took them 11 years to build. And well, I guess the widest part was 2.3 miles wide. That's a big dam. And it flows all the way up into the Mediterranean. And speaking of the Mediterranean, we flew back into Cairo, and we decided to spend a little more extra money, and we drove up to the Alexandria on the Mediterranean. And I wanted to get my coffee in a real cup, and they wouldn't let me at Starbucks, so I went to this place. And I thought she looked like Catherine Zeta-Jones. So this was up in Alexandria, and big castle right on the sea. Oh, the Mediterranean was so beautiful. And I want to go back and sail across the Mediterranean over to Greece. And there's looking back. So heading home, following the geese. Oh, home sweet home after that long plane ride. I had to rest for about 3 days on the couch with my cat, Croaky. And all right. And, you know, when I do this live, I'm happy to answer questions and get comments and It's just a lot of fun doing this live. So I hope to present this with these wonderful pictures to you anytime. Thanks for being with me today. Let's see.